we've said that the choices for sports cars in the $25,000 to $60,000 range are dwindling. If we were to create a car for the segment, what would we focus on to make it a commercial success? Well, that's
to make it a commercial success. Well, that's different.
That's different. I think we should just say, what would we focus on? Because if it was a commercial success, more companies would make them.
Hey folks, today's episode is brought to you in part by Vuori. I love Vuori, and since we've started reading ads for them, I've gotten emails from a couple people who have bought Vuori shirts and pants and shorts and loved it. I am literally wearing a Vuori t-shirt right now. In this episode you're watching, I'm wearing a flannel overshirt and a Vuori t-shirt under it. I wear them literally every day. It's a totally new perspective on performance apparel. It's perfect if you're sick and tired of traditional old workout gear. And yes, everything is designed to work out in, but it doesn't look like it or feel like it. It's so comfortable, you're going to want to wear it all the time. And in fact, I do wear it all the time. I wear it out. I wear it to work. I wear it at the gym. I wear it to Pilates class. I wear it under a sweater when I go to dinner. I wear it under a blazer. I mean, it's good for everything. It's incredibly versatile. It can be used for any activity. They're just the best shirts. And if you're like me, when it's hot out, you can get a little sweaty. And my favorite thing by far about Vuori shirts, especially compared to like traditional cotton shirts, is they don't show sweat. It breathes great, but it doesn't sweat stain. You don't have those like pools of like water. It just somehow magically doesn't show sweat. It's great. It's designed to look great in everyday life, perfect for any workout. I can keep reading these things, but the bottom line is I have replaced 90% of the t-shirts in my closet with Vuori shirts. They've also got the men's core shorts, super comfortable lined athletic short, good for any sport. I wear those when I go hiking. And then the men's Sunday performance jogger, which is what Zach wears all the time. He doesn't like jeans, so he messes with those pants. Good for lounging, working out, long drives, perfect. Also available as a short. I love Vuori. They do a great job, and they got good sweatshirts and hoodies also. I got a Vuori hat. You might be seeing that mustard colored hat, knit cap I'm wearing in some videos recently. That's Vuori. It's an investment in your happiness. For our listeners, they're offering 20% off of your first purchase. Get yourself some of the most comfortable and versatile clothing on the planet at vuori.com/TST. It's Vuori, but it's spelled Vuori. VUORI.com/TST. 20% off your first purchase and free shipping on any order in the U.S. over $75 and free returns. Vuori.com/TST and discover the versatility of Vuori clothing. I love it. You will too. Also, of course, the Patreon. The best website in the world, patreon.com/The Smoking Tire Podcast. You can get our podcast ad-free. You can ask our questions of our guests in a private commenting and questioning environment. You can get the live stream and watch our podcast live, interact with us live on the air. You can get an ad-free listening experience. You can get the show the same day it's recorded and not have to wait till Tuesday, Thursday. And our new, you get an extra podcast every month at the Pro Driver tier, and our new championship tier, you get the Smoking Tire car review videos ad-free as well. It is excellent. Patreon.com/The Smoking Tire Podcast.
All right, folks, on this show, it's going to be like 2020 all over again. I'm at home. I'm drinking tea by the fire because, as it just so happens, I picked up the plague. Damn it. And I can't leave the house. But we're going to do some radio anyway. I'm going to give you a review of the Bentley GT V8 S and wrap up the route to Vine, which was exceptional. Zach and I are going to talk about our favorite road trips of all time. We are also going to talk a little bit about the GT3 RS, though not too much because the video hasn't come out yet, and we want to save that. But I am going to talk about the one of the hardest things I've ever done, filming a car, which I just did on Monday, and we're going to get to a whole lot of your questions as I sit by the fire from home. It's the Smoking Tire Podcast. Well, hello from home, folks. Feels like April 2020 right now. I got it again. God. I didn't think I had it, and then Zach reminded me to just test myself one more time, and then I did. I got back from Route to Vine, and I was very tired, and was understandably tired because I was go for 5 days, followed by 2 nights in a row of sleeping less than 4 hours. I took a 5:30 a.m. flight home from San Francisco, and it was 28 degrees outside. And so I might have had chills, but it was also really fucking cold. Like you ever get on the first flight out from a cold place, and the plane has been sitting out there all night, and so they haven't put the heat on or anything yet, and you get in a really cold plane, you got to sit out there. So it was real cold. And I got home and slept for like a day, but I was just like, well, of course I'm sleeping for a day. Like I'm super tired because I've been working too much and not sleeping, and all that and drinking wine instead of sleeping. And then I kind of got out of that. And then I went about my life for 2 days, fairly normal, nothing too weird. But then I woke up this morning sniffly, which was strange. And Zach was like, maybe you should take a test. And I did, and it was fucking positive. So I probably had COVID this whole fucking time. Didn't know. So here we are.
You probably caught it on the trip, and then it, slowly embeds itself.
Yeah. I mean, but I tested negative Saturday and Sunday. So I tested once on Saturday and twice on Sunday, all negatives. And then I was like, well, I guess I don't have it. I guess I'm just run down and need to catch up on rest and eat healthy and work out and whatever. And I kind of dragged ass at the gym on Monday, but I felt like I was still tired. Tuesday, I drove all the way to Thermal, 5 o'clock in the morning, drove GT3 RS all day, and then drove home. And like, oh, shocker, you're tired from that. 2-3 hour transits and a full track day. Like, yeah, of course you're tired. Why wouldn't you be tired? That's normal. And then here we are. So anyway, canceled my obligations for the rest of the week. Looks like I had to disappoint a few people, which is unfortunate. And I hate doing shit like that. I hate being someone who cancels things. I hate being unreal. I mean, I know at this point, it's like no one's fault, and this is just what the world is. And every once in a while, someone's got to cancel some shit because of fucking COVID. But like, just hate being that guy. I hate making all the contact tracing calls and emails. Those fucking suck, and I hate the backwards calls and then the forwards calls. And that's what I did all fucking morning. It sucks. So here we are, live from Zoom. At least I get to sit in front of the fire. Like, that's kind of nice. We might have a cat stop by. That could be a nice thing. Like, Cricket is here. Hi, Cricket. Please don't attack the wire for the camera. That would be very nice of you. Speaking of COVID, I can't recommend highly enough the most recent Dollop episode about when the bubonic plague came to San Francisco in 1901 or whatever it was, and how the city really fumbled the fucking ball on that one, and really kept their eye on the short-term goals instead of the long-term goals, and how that worked out for everybody. There are definitely some metaphors involved in that one. That's a good 90 minutes of radio right there if you really want to see a little how we got to now type of situation and why history echoes over and over.
It's amazing considering the advances in medical technology in the last 100 years.
Oh, it's not medical technology. It's not medical technology at all. It's people and people who are worried about either their own image, politicians with their own image, or the interests of business. You can't stop the commerce, angle of it. And even my own, I'm talking rather than like in my own head. I'm not like, oof, maybe this is a sign that I should take a few days and get some rest. I'm like, ugh, I had to cancel my business arrangements. It's like, we're not even immune from it on like an individual level, it's just people, I think. But yeah, it's a crew show today, obviously from the crib. I want to talk about Route to Vine because, it was actually very fun. I want to do a little review of the Bentley GT V8 S that I drove for 600 miles. That was quite lovely. And then we have a little bit of a topic that was suggested by one of our listeners, watchers, whatever the fuck, that they want to hear about. Are in our list of the suggestions for our five favorite road trips that we've done. I have a little list going. Zach, do you have a little list you made?
Yep, I made a list.
We did homework. Well, we can start with, one goes into the other because Route to Vine, it really was an excellent trip. It ran very smoothly. The clients were very happy. The roads were exceptional. Were exceptional with exception because there was one road that runs over the mountain between Yountville and Healdsburg, where there were three, I don't know if you call them sinkholes, but where half the road had gone down a cliff. Like
what happened to Highway 33.
Yeah, and it was still like passable, like one lane, single lane passable, but like sketchy, very, very sketchy. Fortunately, Fred Smith for Road and Track ran the route the day before we had to start it. So he found those things and we knew about them and we knew that they were passable, but boy, was it shady.
It's like those videos you see of buses in, Pakistan or India or like China, and they're on a road that is like barely wide enough for a shopping cart. And they're just, and they got to like put boards under one tire because it fell away. Nuh-uh.
Yeah. And I'm in a 5,300 pound Bentley, it's not in a Miata.
They send you first and then they'll know if the Lotuses can make it.
But the one of the legs, and I knew this was going to be awesome because I made the route. And so I also drove it before we did it together. I got to drive it once in my Spider and then I drove it again in this Bentley. Was from Healdsburg, which is sort of a beautiful wine oriented town in Sonoma, west along the Russian River on the 116, and then just turning south and taking the 1 all the way south. That's about 60 miles north of San Francisco. So you take the 1 all the way south to San Francisco through Bodega Bay and Point Reyes and Marin to San Francisco, and then you have to cross the city, which does sort of suck for a half an hour, and then just down Skyline pretty much all the way to Santa Cruz. And that is just, that is one of the best days of driving, you could ever do. It's incredible. And that part of PCH is really underappreciated. Big Sur is the most obvious part of PCH, and it is stunningly beautiful. It deserves its reputation, but this part of PCH, which is north of the city, is really, really epic. And in fact, is quieter than the Big Sur one. There's fewer cars. So,
like up here?
No, that's Half Moon Bay. You got to go north of the Bay Area, north of San Francisco. It's moving slow because we're doing a lot of things at once. So north of Bodega Bay. See, there's the Russian River.
Oh yeah.
So that the Russian River runs east to west across Sonoma. So the 116 runs across that Russian River through the redwoods, and it meets up with PCH at Jenner. And then you turn south on PCH there through Sea Ranch and Salmon Creek and Bodega Bay, and that section is absolutely incredible. It's so great. The views.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and
The Range Rover launch was here, and then
Mhm.
it's beautiful.
It's good. And I did it in the Spider, but you don't need a mid-engine roadster to do it. I mean, it was great in the Bentley. It would be great in a rental car. I mean, whatever. It's just the road, and they just repaved it. So the tarmac is exceptional. That whole section. So that was really nice. We got to do some laps at Sonoma. I did a lot of laps. They let me take the Bentley on the track.
How did it do?
So the Bentley, this is the brand new Continental GT V8 S, which is the smaller of the two engines. It's basically the same engine you get with a Panamera Turbo or a Urus, twin turbo V8 4-liter. It's got the 8-speed the ZF gearbox, nicely tuned, all-wheel drive, torque vectoring, active anti-roll control. It did not have ceramic brakes. It had big, massive 10-piston steel brakes, air suspension. There it is. And there's photos of the actual car I drove on the gram. It's got that sort of speed body line highlight on the lower valance, black wheels, deep air dam. Looks like the one in the photos there has the same carbon body kit. This thing was $260,000 base price, and then had $77,000 in options on top of that.
God.
It was intense. $36,000 of those options were on the interior. Virtually none of those options were performance oriented.
So that means it's $40,000 worth of aesthetic exterior things.
Yeah. So like the body kit, which was carbon, was $13,000. The wheels being black was like $4,000. It has the floating bees, meaning the center caps are always vertical. That's like $1,000.
That's cool.
The grill is blacked out. And also I say interior, meanwhile, the name stereo was $10,000, stuff. So I didn't count that as being interior options. That's the stereo option. But like, there was also like $10,000 worth of diamond quilted stitched leather, and just, I have the, I could get up right now, but I don't think it's worth it. But just trust me, there's lots of little, carbon fiber dashboard, carbon fiber this, contrast stitching on the steering wheel, contrast leather on the shifter. I mean, you could do all kinds of stuff. Massage seats, which were great. So I don't know what it's like to be able to blow that kind of cash on a daily driver type of car. So I can't tell you if it's worth it or not, but I can tell you is it feels incredibly substantial, incredibly insulated and comfortable, and very, very well made, and refined. But also, I probably ran 50 laps of Sonoma. And yes, it is heavy, and it's not what I would buy for track days, but it was shockingly fun to fling around. You can drive it at the limit. It is well composed. It will rotate under braking. Sonoma is turn 1 is up the hill, and then turn 2 is right over the crest. When you get that negative G assistance over the crest, you could kick the back end out and do a slide there. I was doing slides there. I could slide it on the downhill entry into 4, the NASCAR corner. The brakes did get a little soft at one point, and I dropped 10 PSI out of the tires. The standard tire pressure is 45 PSI. That's the recommended tire pressure.
Wow.
So I dropped them down to 35, and they came up to 45 on the heat.
How many laps did you run per session? Like, would you run 3 laps in a row, come in, pick someone else up 3 laps, or 2 or 10?
And I'd run an out. At first I was doing an out, a flyer, and then an in. And then after that, I had to give more people rides. So I was just doing an out and an in, but it would only be it'd be a minute or 2 between each lap. And I wasn't pushing every braking zone. I don't know, whatever the last corner is on the course, the hairpin, that's a very dangerous corner to lose brakes. You just drive straight into a wall.
Yeah.
And so I was
at 120.
Yeah. So I was getting up to about 110 there, and then braking at what would be considered probably the 6 board, to not push the brakes there. But I would push the brakes going into turn 4 so I could initiate a little slide. The only thing that I found to be mildly annoying about this car, which is not unique to this car at all, is that in manual mode, it would shift up gears when you hit red line, which it's a luxury car. So I could understand somebody making the choice of having it upshift as opposed to go, on the rev limiter. It's not a GT3 RS. If that happens in a GT3 RS, that's an unforgivable sin. But in a luxury car, they probably default to the more refined choice, which is to give you the next gear at red line versus to bang on the rev limiter. And then when you're downshifting, it wouldn't give you the next gear down until the engine got below 4,000 RPM. So even if there was only 1,000 RPM between gears, it would require like a 2,000 RPM cushion to downshift.
Well, that's what happens in a recession. The percentage, the interest rates go up, and it's like, I'm sorry, you need a few more RPMs before we're willing to give you the next gear.
Yeah, it runs a credit check before giving you the next gear down.
Guys, got to take a break real quick for NASCAR, who has brought to you this episode of the Smoking Tire Podcast. The 2023 NASCAR season is officially underway. Coming off a truly epic Daytona 500 last weekend, the drivers will now make their way out to the West Coast, back to the West Coast, for some unbelievable on-track action at Auto Club Speedway outside of Los Angeles, which Zach is actually going to the race to see our friend Parker Kligerman race. Last year's race was filled with nonstop 5-wide racing from start to finish, with 2021 NASCAR Series Cup champion and California native Kyle Larson coming out on top. There's only one more chance for the stars of the NASCAR Cup Series to take home the checkered flag on the famous 2-mile oval, so you can bet it's going to be a race for the record books. That's right. They are getting rid of that track, aren't they? They are de-NASCAR-fying it. I think it's going to stay an HPDE track so that people like us can go drive it. But this will be the last race for NASCAR at the current configuration of Auto Club Speedway. Check it out. Whether you're an avid fan or a NASCAR newbie, tune in to the NASCAR Cup Series race at Auto Club Speedway Sunday, February 26th, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 12:30 p.m. Pacific on Fox.
So because everything I've read about the GT and heard from you was that as like in canyons, in everyday driving, it's amazing. Were there things that it did dynamically that were like really good in the canyon, but it kind of fell apart on track, or vice versa? Or was it just the track was just as good as a canyon road? Everything just happens faster.
I mean, I would say this is a phenomenal 8/10ths car. You don't really want to, you don't want to buy this thing to push its limits, because it is heavy and it has all this tech to compensate for its weight. Mm-hmm. And the tech works, but the weight is still there. And so the weight will get the tires really hot and slippery and the weight will, cook the brake pads, and there's not really any way around that. But on a Canyon, where most of the time you're keeping it under 8/10 or so, and you're not shifting at red line necessarily, and you're not trying to downshift from, a high RPM, in order to threshold brake into a corner. Your driving is a little more relaxed. I would say that it really does shine in the Canyons. A lot of the driving when I'm leading these groups, I can't use manual mode. I have to leave it in sport auto because I have a radio in my right hand and I'm talking to people. So most of the drive, I'm driving one-handed with the radio in my other hand. In fact, this is my third time doing one of these road and track events. For the very first time, I brought a cell phone holder for the windshield, a mount. In the past, I've done it while holding a radio and a phone in my right hand.
Oh man. Yeah,
so which is actually quite exhausting. After the last one where I was doing that, I actually had like my left arm like hurt because I drove one-handed for 4 days. The Bentley was really, really nice at 7/8, a spirited cruise. If that was your, it'll make an excellent daily driver, which for the fucking money they want for it. If it didn't, you'd have a real problem. And you could get through a track day with it. Like it wouldn't, especially if you're a beginner or intermediate level driver and you're not really capable of pushing. If you're an advanced level driver, you don't want this thing for a track day, but it would survive. The engine it pulls hard,
What that's perfect for is if someone owns the GT and they drive it to the track to meet their car, and then their car explodes and they're like, well, I've already paid my entry today, so I'm getting some driving done. And you can.
Yeah.
It's cool. We live in an amazing time for cars. Like the fact that this marriage of absolute luxury, not like, oh, it's a BMW, it's nice, or a Mercedes. Like, no. This is one of two names that basically is underneath the Webster's dictionary of luxury. And now you can run them at a track and it's not terrible. And it also still rides really well. It's so cool.
And now the first gen and second gen cars were on that Phaeton platform where the engine really hangs out in front of the front axle. And it was a very well appointed and very well massaged, Volkswagen platform, really. This is now on the Panamera platform. And so the dash to axle, the dimensions, the fundamental guts of the car are shared with the most athletic luxury sedan that there is, and not with a Volkswagen cruiser. And so that kind of stuff really comes out in the handling. And it is a very athletic car. And oh, by the way, the interior, yes, it had the one I drove had crazy quilting and all kinds of other shit, but it's the interior is really put together really, really, really nicely. There's not a lot of poorly thought out stuff, in this car. I've been in a lot of other cars where things are just like Mike Guy, our editor-in-chief, who was on the podcast recently, was driving what I believe was that very same yellow Mercedes SL63 that we had recently. And that car is not particularly intuitive. It's got a lot of tech, but it's real kind of confusing on how you figure out how to use it.
Well, and that has rear steer. And does the Bentley have rear steer?
The Bentley has rear steer, but it's programmed better. It doesn't have that weird, am I drifting or what is happening back there? rear steer the Mercedes has, and the Mercedes is over $200,000 as well. It's not like, it's not like the Mercedes is 130, 140, and the Bentley is, way up in the sky over there. Those cars are priced closer together than you might think. And so I
would much rather look at this interior than the Mercedes interior too.
The Bentley interior is super sick. I mean, one thing that's really expensive that you could skip out on is that like rotating dash thing. In this photo you've got here, it looks like there's those 2 gauges or something at the top of the dash. That thing rotates like a James Bond license plate, and the screen is on the other side. Yeah, there's the quilting. Mine was black, but you can see the quilting on the doors, the quilting on the seats, where that wood grain is, which that was gorgeous. That wood grain.
What I like about that rotating thing, the rotating thing is expensive, but it's like they looked at the technology available today, and I think they did a great job of marrying modern tech with kind of the old style of a Bentley interior, whereas Mercedes, that has that huge tablet in the middle, controls everything, and it's just always, it's omnipresent, obviously, because you can't put it anywhere, but it kind of like, I think, ruins what is mostly a pretty good looking interior. Right.
Yeah. I totally agree. And there's a lot of stuff to play with in this one, in the Bentley. But it's very intuitive, for the most part. There's not a lot of stuff that's buried too deeply in menus. CarPlay worked really well. I had no issues at all with CarPlay, in this thing. And the only thing, it's a stupid gripe, but I did have to run my Valentine 1 cable to all the way at the back of the armrest. There was an elegant solution would be to have a 12-volt plug in the side of the footwell, passenger footwell. So a cable for an accessory could go straight down and not come right across the whole center tunnel. But, that's a strictly a Valentine 1 portable cable user. If you owned the car, you'd hardwire the Valentine 1 and you'd really solve that problem. But what an amazing car that is. It sound, all Bentleys, they kind of sound like plumbing. They've got that sound. It's like kind of old school toilet flushes sound.
Well, it's a good segue, because Bentley announced today that they're getting rid of the W12, and the W12, while an amazing piece of engineering and very cool, and it's like, oh, it has a bigger number than an 8, but it always just sounded like, to me, just 2 Camry engines. It sounded so bleh.
Yeah. Well, we have that W12 engine block coffee table at the shop. And what's amazing about that is it's got 12 cylinders, and yet it is very, very compact. And so it allowed Bentley to put a 12-cylinder engine where they probably shouldn't have been able to fit one at all. But in operation, it's not a particularly exciting engine. Smart turbo technology can easily make that much power with fewer cylinders these days. There's certainly an advantage to having a lighter weight, even more compact V8. And I imagine we'll start seeing electric Bentleys soon. But I don't think this thing that I drove, this V8 S, which was my favorite of the last gen Bentleys as well. That's just a gorgeous car. It's hard to argue with that, but it has great balance. It definitely had some turbo lag. If you were cruising around at 10% throttle, you didn't really notice it. But if you just stomped on it in first gear to get away from a traffic light or something quickly, which I would do, because, I had a group, we divided the group of 20 cars into 3 groups of 2 groups of 7 and 1 group of 6. And so I led one, Mike Guy led one in that Mercedes SL, and Fred led one of the groups in that BMW M8, and then AJ took up the rear in the Audi RS3, AJ Baim. And you'd want to get your whole group through that light. So if I was at the front of a traffic light, when it turned green, I'm stopping the throttle and I'm on the radio going, okay, we all want to try and get through this light together. So everyone be on the ball. And when I would stop the throttle, it would be laggy. You'd have nothing, and then the turbos would kick on and it would go buck wild.
Now, if you've had it in like sport mode, or if you did launch control, then does it build that boost and there's no lag? It's just, but under normal driving, do you think it's set like that?
No. I mean, if you put it in sport mode, all it really does is hold a lower gear, and sharpen the throttle response. It doesn't change the power output. It doesn't do it. I mean, if I were to do a launch, probably, but that didn't really occur to me. I just smashed it, and it was fine. It just, you notice, it's got nothing for 2,000 RPM, and then you just get a monster, hit of torque. But it's a very impressive car. I mean, as it should be for the money. You drive a car that's $300,000, and if it doesn't blow your mind, someone has gone horribly wrong. Shout out to Bentley for letting me have a go in that. It was pretty epic, and people were really into it. When we used to do the Gotham Dream Car tours, I think people were wowed by the Ferraris and the Lamborghinis and not that excited by the Bentleys, but when you got to go a couple 100 miles, the Bentley really is the answer.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I speak for myself, like growing up as a kid, the cars I noticed were the fast ones and the loud ones, both figuratively and aesthetically. Like the Ferraris, they get the attention because they're literally bright red and like shouting for attention. And the Bentley, traditionally driven by probably someone who has a Ferrari, but they know they want to drive around in comfort. So it just doesn't get the attention of the 6-year-old. But as we've driven so many things, like objectively, it is a more comfortable way to get around. And now they've added all this dynamic ability to it. It's pretty rad.
Yeah, it's excellent. But other people brought some great cars too. I mean, there were a couple of Ferraris. There was a bunch of Corvettes. Corvettes seem very popular on these events. There were 2 vintage cars, an Alfa GT V or GT 2000 or something, and a 911 Carrera from the 80s. Both started and finished the event.
Nice.
There was a first-gen Boxster Spider. There was a Hellcat. There was a Ferrari F12. There was a bunch of Porsches, 911 turbos. Someone brought a Panamera wagon, Panamera Turbo Sport Turismo. There was a C63 coupe. Good spread and some very nice people. Oh, the Camaro ZL1. Shout out to Doug and Lindsay who were driving the Camaro ZL1. They're very cool. And that Aston Vanquish, that was excellent. Loved that car. That was a great looking car, right? Really, really great generation of Aston Vanquish there. I think it's a 2018 maybe or 2019, whatever like the last year was of the Vanquish before they switched over to the DBS. That's what that was, and it was pretty excellent spec. It was a really good time, and we've got 2 spaces left for the Smoky 600. This one has been popular and has already almost sold out. So Hannah and I are going to go, I think the first or second week in March we're going to and run the route. It's going to be in June. It's going to be starting in I believe Bowling Green, but Nashville, Bowling Green, Kentucky, the Corvette Museum, Lexington, and then Knoxville, Tennessee, and then Tail of the Dragon, finishing in Tail of the Dragon area with some of the greatest roads in the Smoky Mountains. Of course, you don't need a supercar. You don't need, you just need a car you really like driving. We had my homie Ryan on this past Route to Vine with a GR Corolla, and that's as good a car as any. That car was excellent. He had a really good time on the street and the track. Where we've got NCM Motorsports Park, the National Corvette Museum track, which is an excellent track. I actually won there, at American Endurance Racing, which team fucking dangerous people. We we won our class there 2 years ago, or maybe it was 3 years ago.
What were you driving then?
NC Miata.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's a really fun track, and it should be great. So experiences.roadandtrack.com if you want to come do that one. And okay, I'm looking at my notes because I moved some things. So I did drive the GT3 RS, but I don't want to talk about it yet because the video should come out first. One thing I will say about about videos is, you know, we have been very proud of the last couple of videos that we made, the 911 Dakar and the Mustang Mach-E road trip to Phoenix. Those are, you know, even if you weren't interested in the topics, that's the type of videos that make us, you know, happy to be sort of content creators, where we can have an angle and tell a story and craft something, as opposed to just set up cameras and drive for 20 minutes and talk. And YouTube doesn't reward your time in a way that they probably should. But you know, if they're gonna kick our ass in the algorithm, you know, I want to go down swinging and at least make videos that I can look back and go, you know what, we did it. We did a good job on that. That's something that I'm proud of. And so for the GT3 RS, like, I went out to a press launch by myself. It was only a half a day. And I wrote a whole script, and I did probably the hardest thing I've ever done in 14 years of making videos, which is drive on a racetrack while reading a script. And I hope you don't, when you see the video, I hope you can't tell that I did that. You know, it's not like I drove around the whole track day at 30 miles an hour while reading a script. I also drove fast and got genuine driving impressions, but there are bits that are where it was important to stick to the script because it's how the story had to flow. And normally, if I have to be in a car and scripted, you know, I would have Zach there to make sure I stuck to the script, and he would be off camera making sure I got the words right, and I could drive and talk. But I had to while driving on a track, I had to read the line, which was often 3 or 4 sentences, put the script away where you couldn't see it anywhere in the car, drive and get up to speed, drive, deliver that line. And if I didn't get it right, I'd have to slow down, check the script, put it away, just get up to speed again, drive. And it was very, very hard. It was like, you know,
like, for people's information, when we made Proving Grounds, the NBC sports show, you know, Parker or Lee or Sam would be out in the car, like, doing their review, and they might have notes on paper or on their phone. But either myself or Hardegree would be in this car near the track within walkie distance. And we'd like cell phone call and we'd listen in. And if they missed something, we would call them on the radio or on the phone and say, hey, don't forget this thing. Don't forget this. Like, it is really tough. And I've reviewed cars too on the track without a person, you know, kind of in your ear, like, you know, a newscast producer. And like, you're going around the corner and you're like, I think I can look at my note real quick. And then you look up and you're like, oh, it's the wall. Or, you know, or you're just like missing stuff. And the stress and adrenaline is much higher than it is if you were racing the car, because you're trying to like remember, read, judge yourself. Is this a good line? Is this a bad thought?
Well, what I should have done was print, you know, I think I wrote, you know, when I write the script, it's like, regular text is voiceover, italicized text is a stand-up, and then bold text is in-car. And so it bounces back and forth between the 3 types of presenting. And then when I got to the track, I hand wrote, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the script for each of the blocks I had to do in-car. What I should have done and didn't do was take each of those blocks and print them on like size 35 font, where each one page was a thought.
Right.
And I could look at it like real fast, even if it's like on the floor of the car, and then just like throw it off to the side and have the next one on the. Instead, I've got like a 4-page document that's like size 12 font, and I'm unfolding it, reading it, folding it back up, shoving it in the seat, and then trying to do the line, and then like pulling it out, unfolding it again. And it was like, it took me about 25 minutes to get through 6 blocks of text, which is it was very, very hard and very stressful. It's different when you have any kind of support for doing something like that, like the cell phone connection or a walkie or a producer in the car to go, no, you need to start and end on these 2 words. Because it's just, there's a lot of things, it's when you're by yourself, you're also thinking about, are my cameras recording? Is my audio, did I slate this properly? Are my cameras in the right settings? It becomes an awful lot to think about when you're by yourself. And then because there's a script and a story to it, the premise of the story is this car's probably too gnarly for the street. But if you're going to have one of these track club memberships, like at Thermal, where I drove the car, are you better off just buying a race car, which you could get for less money? And so in order to explore that, I didn't just need mounted shots and beauty shots of the car. I needed to get all these other random shots, like with my phone, of the club and the surroundings and other garages with other cars and the restaurant. And so it's just kind of like, I certainly don't mind doing the work, but it was just the juggling of a lot of different processes that had to be done in a half a day. And it turned out to be quite difficult. And it all kind of climaxed in difficulty with trying to drive on a track while reading a script and delivering lines. But Zach's going to start editing tonight or tomorrow, and we should have this video to you by next week. And if it comes out like I think it's going to come out, then it should be something that we're very proud of. And if it doesn't, well, we'll try again. But I also have a written piece for Road and Track. That's the other thing, is I wrote this whole script, spent like most of Monday on it, got home, and it helps, I guess, that I'm sick because I can't really do anything else today. But I just wrote 2,500 words on this car for Road and Track. So I had to write what was essentially another story that's even longer and has no improv track bits or anything like that to work with, and write the same story again. And there's so much to the GT3 RS in terms of the tech and the aero and the little nuances of what's changed that I think it's like 1,800 words in before I even drive the car. So it's like, there's a lot to this car. And so we'll talk about it, the car itself, after the video goes up, because I'd really like you guys to see that first. Do you want to talk about our 5 best road trips, Zach?
Yeah, we have that, and we have some questions, of course, but let's start with the road trips, the theme.
Sun is really coming in on an angle right now. The light's getting a little hot. I wonder.
The bottom half of your face looks like you're wearing a white mask.
Can I adjust that? I don't know if I can adjust my camera. Is there ways to adjust cameras?
I think you
video settings.
I don't know, try.
Can I do anything? Adjust for low light? No.
What if you
definitely not adjust for low light?
Can you just move your chair closer to the camera? Because right now you're in shadow.
Yeah, possibly.
Good.
Yeah, all right. Let's see if I can move my chair a little closer.
We'll cut this out of the real
Chair-
show, but
The
all
chair
of
is
you
connected to the table, so
live viewers get to watch this part.
oh, this isn't going to work. Hang on. Mhm. Oh boy.
You might, let's see.
Well,
Yeah, better.
that's better.
The
that's
sun will
better.
creep up your face as time goes by. Or
Yeah.
maybe if you'd have to cheat to your left. Like, no, like,
Well-
sorry, rotate and look left, but you have to move the camera also.
No, that's not worth it. It is what it is. I'm at home. The sun is moving across the horizon. It is what it is. Do you want to go first, Zach, or should I?
Sure. And we can ping pong if you want. So qualification, I tried to leave production trips out of this because I think people have heard a lot of the stories of, where I've gone or we've gone on production. I made it one exception, which we might both align on. We'll see. But I'll start with the non-production shoot or the non-production trip. I mean, my greatest, weirdest road trip was sophomore year of college when a friend of mine and I decided to drive from Colorado to the Bay Area because we live sort of near each other, and he was a car person. And he had a modded second gen RX-7 with bad suspension and no maintenance and no snow tires, like sport tires, but it hadn't snowed. So we were ripping like over Eisenhower Tunnel down, it's 4 lanes on the west side of that mountain. And we were like apexing lanes at 6 a.m., just trying to make record time, cannonball the whole thing. And we blew that engine up outside of St. George, Utah.
Oh, that's a good
And,
place.
that
I
was
like St.
after
George,
running out
Utah.
of gas and getting a merciful tow. And we passed one of those signs that said last gas 160, and we didn't see it, and we ran out of gas about a mile before the exit, got a tow, but then we blew the engine up, and then we were sitting in a diner trying to figure out when the next bus would arrive because we didn't have internet at that place. And then the bus pulled up, and we ran out there and we ran up to the bus driver and we said, "Hey, we heard you can buy tickets at the station in Salt Lake City." And he was like, "Yes, you can." And then he looked at the car that we had just climbed out of and he said, "What's happening with this car?" We said, "We're leaving it here." And he looked at us like we had 100% stolen this vehicle. And we're like, no, it's his title, blah, blah, blah. And we planes, trains, and automobiled it back to the Bay Area. And I think my friend Jeremy went back and got the car months later because it was, in the middle of the country. But
That's
the reason
awesome.
it was one of those road trips where everything went wrong. But it was like the total car guy, sophomore, 19-year-old hubris that led to all of our own problems. And, looking back on it fondly, and at the time it was like, are we going to have Thanksgiving in this town of 400 people? Like, I don't even know how to solve this problem. Like, we can't fix the car. We might not even know how to get home. It was a good lesson in just like, all right, rolling with punches and figuring it out.
I think I might have misunderstood the challenge. I didn't know that you wanted me to do my 5 favorite road trip stories from my past. I made it more, my list is more like a suggestion of road trips that other people could do, like best places to take a road trip. And they're all based in my own experience because they're all trips I've actually taken. But yeah, no, I don't have any stories of like moving units from like north to south and the cops not finding them, even though they pulled me over and leaned over the backpack that was containing multiple pounds of ganja and mushrooms.
Well, then we'll cover both bases. You're going to be the tour guide for people, and I will be cautionary tales.
Yeah. So, I mean, my first one, I actually already discussed earlier in the show. The Healdsburg to Santa Cruz across the Russian River and down. That's about 190 miles, and it's just for a one-dayer, about as good as it gets in America. So we'll move on past that. I would say southern Germany over the Swiss Alps into Italy. or basically anywhere in the high passes in Switzerland is also about as good as driving gets. There's obviously a lot of speed enforcement cameras and stuff on the motorways in Switzerland, so you can't even go 1 kilometer over the speed limit there. But up on the high passes, you can let the engine sing, as it were, and have a really amazing driving day. And then once you get into Italy, there are technically laws, but they are not enforced by anybody ever. And so Italy is there's a reason they call Italy God's racetrack. It's because you could do basically anything you want, and the roads are really fun. Should I go through all 5, or you want to go back? You want to tell another story?
All right. I mean, the second one's very short, and yeah, mine are all like memorable trips I've taken. But when I was 11, we did a month-long RV trip in the Southwest, and like I was 11, and I was like, "This is stupid. I want to be home BMXing with my friends and all that, dumb things that like an unappreciative kid does." But what I've noticed is now when you and I or on other production trips have like driven through, New Mexico or Arizona, it's like it hits different and it feels really special. So I think like the takeaway for people is that, sightseeing road trips might seem like, I think, a little bit lame when you're younger or maybe chasing adrenaline and speed. It's not going to be like this dynamic thing because some of the highways are just dead straight. But it can just be like a really special place. Like the desert is a very interesting place to take a trip to. You just have to take the right kind of trip.
Right. I didn't appreciate a lot of the traveling my parents took me on, like the cultural type traveling when I was younger. But now that like I know those are kind of like familiar places because I went there when I was a kid, and I appreciate it as an adult. Exactly. I would say the Iceland Ring Road, which we did do as a production trip, but is a must vacation for anyone who is a road tripper. The only downside to Iceland, not a lot of good cars there. If you're renting a car, it's going to be a shitty car. They just don't, they don't really do sports cars in Iceland. They have really 2 kinds of cars there. Shit boxes and like off-road trucks. That's pretty much what everybody drives. Some sort of like average level economy car or a big SUV kind of off-roader. And so, the roads are amazing. They're very well maintained, the paved roads anyway. The sites are beautiful. There's a lot of like van camping there. You can rent a camper van from any number of places if you want to do that. But there's also some totally decent hotels and places to stay along the Ring Road also. But we went there for Drive on NBC Sports, and somehow we shipped a McLaren there, and I got to drive that, and no one had ever seen it. It was I'm sure it's not to this day, but as of 2017, this was the only McLaren to ever go to Iceland, and I drove that road like I had the fastest car that island had ever seen by a lot, because I did. and I treated the whole place like there were no laws, and people were very passive and polite about the whole thing and let me pass wherever I wanted to. They all knew I was coming because the whole island, everyone knows each other.
Oh, that was so cool. We were shooting B-roll of that car the first day, and these like, I don't know, whatever, hydraulic line guys like found us, and they were just like, "Oh, my friend posted this on Facebook in town, and now you're here in the middle of nowhere," and they were like, "We think one guy on the island owns a Ferrari," and it was like that's the only person in the whole country that has a sports car.
Yeah, a couple of people told me about this. There was one guy with a Ferrari, and there were 2 people with Porsche Boxsters, and that was it. Those were the sports cars. And so, which is a shame for a country that has such amazing roads for there to be so few sports cars. But I understand their seasons are short, and so it's not really a cultural thing for them. But that's okay. But the drive itself, no matter what vehicle you're in, is unbelievably beautiful and epic. Also, another great road trip I can't recommend highly enough is Valley of Fire, and then into the Utah national parks like Zion and Bryce. Zion is a great park for hiking, but also is a great park for road tripping through. The road that I believe is US 9 that goes from the north end of the park all the way to the south is just amazing and beautiful. It's obviously very busy because it's inside of a national park, so it's not like you can tear ass through there. But you don't need to, because the views are just amazing. There's plenty of gorgeous places to stop and take a picture, and a lot of history in how that road was built, and these really cool tunnels that go up the side of the canyon.
And there's something nice about, because I know you're like the road shapes in Yosemite and Zion. When you look at them like from a map, or even when you're there, you go, "Oh, this would be a great racetrack." But then when you're there, you don't need to go fast. Like you said, you want to look at everything, but there's something, it just adds like an extra bit of magic that the road is shaped nicely, and that it's a pleasant thing to drive on, even at slow speeds, versus if it was cracked up and kind of, I don't know, they're well maintained for good reason, and it just adds to it.
Yeah, for sure. And the last one on my list is the Colorado trip, which would be Denver to Aspen to Telluride to Grand Junction, which is just an epic series of roads through the Rocky Mountains. You pretty much would do that drive without taking any highway, other than that first awesome part of the 70 that goes into the Rockies. After that, you would get off the freeway and you'd be on some really amazing back roads that are used for like the Colorado Grand Rally, which is a vintage car rally that very, very rich people do. And stuff like that. That trip is a must. Aspen and Telluride are both lovely places to visit, summer or winter, and they have a reputation for being kind of stuffy, but I don't think that reputation is entirely earned. There's totally legit mountain people that live there too, and more importantly, just the scenes and the roads and are just incredible. Telluride's high altitude. I think it's like 8,500 feet, maybe. So you lose. It's big, right? Yeah, ridiculous. You can drive by the double RL on the way out there, Ralph Lauren's ranch.
Oh yeah, you gotta look for the special fence, right?
The special 4-post fence. You need the 4-post fence. Yeah.
I would throw in Pikes Peak because it's not in that area, but if you drive up that road, like one, it's an amazing, interesting drive, and obviously scenic and the vistas and all that stuff. But two, it just makes you appreciate the race, like way more. You're into cars, drive up that, and it's like it pays. There's a payoff in the moment, and then there's a long-standing payoff afterwards. In the appreciation.
Totally. We're talking about places road and track can go next to change it up, and I'm going hard at Colorado, and having to go up Pikes Peak being one of the stops. So hopefully,
you feel like another Route Divine thing.
Yeah. I mean, we don't want to keep doing the same things. We want to change it up. And
Colorado is rich with twisty roads. And remember the red clay dirt road we drove on and for Drive on NBC that was just like a random road next to. You drove along a twisty, amazing road next to a river, and then you turned right, and all of a sudden you were on something that was like perfectly graded for rally driving. Yeah. Clayish. And it was just right in the middle of, I don't know, Colorado Springs adjacent or something.
Yeah. With a BMW 325 on gravel tires. It was perfect.
God, that was what a good setup.
Yeah, it was really nice.
What a great setup.
Yeah. All right. What do the people have on the Patreon? Of course, if you want to get in on the action yourself, patreon.com/the Smoking Tire Podcast. Get the show live, get the show soon after live instead of waiting Tuesday, Thursday. Get your questions read on the air. Get an extra show every month. And by the way, I'm for the pro drivers out there, we are recording the makeup. It's actually we already did the makeup show. So the actual February pro driver show is when, Zach? Tomorrow, right? Tomorrow afternoon?
Yeah, if you're listening to this on Thursday, it's today.
Okay. Today or tomorrow. Thursday this week. And championship tier, get our car review videos completely advertising free as God intended.
All right. Miguel Flores says, do we have any thoughts on the Renault Clio V6? When they become legal to import, he really wants one. They're like $20,000. Now, I've never driven one, but I've heard dynamically they are very compromised, but I think they're interesting. Like they're like the Renault R5. It's like cool and
I've heard the same thing. I've heard they're terrible to drive, but they're so weird that you get all the points just for driving one.
Yeah. And maybe
by the way, there's a lot of cars that are compromised to drive that as long as you drive them below the limit, that doesn't really matter. It's when you start to really push them that bad things happen, right? And so that, 930 turbos and whatever, Renault R5s, you just cruise around in one and you get all the points and you're not, it's fine. It's when you start to push it that bad things happen. So
that's true.
You could have one and drive it around as just a car and not push it, and that would be fine and cool,
Very cool. Kurt Bergstedt recently bought a 2021 Mustang GT with a stick. What mods would we recommend for someone who tracks and weekend drives his car? It's not his daily, and he has access to racetracks in New England.
Well, square stance wheels and tires, a performance-oriented suspension setup. You don't have to do a full brake kit, but certainly pads, fluid, maybe stainless steel brake lines. And then maybe that MGW shifter to improve some of the shifter feel in that car. And I'd pretty much leave it alone after that. I mean, it's got enough power. It's got a pretty good diff, assuming you have a car with one of the good diffs. It's really about your tires, your stance, your alignment, your suspension, and how sport tuned that is, and then your braking power.
He said he was looking at a kit from Steeda that's called Stop the Hop, which basically it's like subframe bracing and some end links that reduces wheel hop. I mean, yeah, that's good.
That could be good too.
$1,000. He said it was $5K for all suspension. I mean, what's cool about the Mustang stuff, and we've talked about Maximum Motorsports before, is their kits are like affordable, priced well, like not expensive. I mean, you can get really good suspension setups from reputable companies for only several $1,000s, which is
and Steeda is a great company. Like whether it's Maximum Motorsports or Steeda or who are the people that Musto got and really liked?
Start with a G. No. Oh God, what's the guy's name?
I don't remember. Sorry, Mike. Whatever it was. You'll remember it as soon as we're done recording this. But whatever it is, you all the problems with those cars have been solved. So you can just buy the kit, and then get a good set of tires and you're good to go.
Cortex Racing. Okay.
There you go. Cortex. Yeah, they make a good package too. Yeah.
Yeah. David says, Matt, now that you've driven the 992 GT3 RS, where do you see the GT program going with the next generation? Is Porsche approaching the limit of what's possible for a street car, or do you think there's more left on the table?
It's an interesting question. They can always find. I mean, this car is more extreme than I thought was possible before. They've eliminated the trunk. The car has no trunk at all. And if Porsche is willing to eliminate the trunk completely, I think they're probably willing to make some other changes that maybe we didn't think that they would ever do. So there definitely is a limit to how much more power they can make out of this engine. I mean, it's the rate of improvement is slowing down. There are certainly going to be more innovative materials and ways that they can cut weight. But they've done some really, really interesting stuff with the aero. But we're already past where most people can use it. I mean, you know, I don't want to give away the game, but I drove as fast as I could drive in one day. You know, if you gave me this car for a month, I'm sure I could go faster. But Jörg Bergmeister was in front of me. You know, it was like a lead follow kind of deal, which it's Pat Long and Jörg Bergmeister. So, you know, it's not like it's a slow lead follow. It's a very fast lead follow. And he was in a regular GT3 and I was in the RS. And he had to work, you know, to go as fast as I wanted to go. He was getting oversteer on corner exits and he was making the car move. And that might have just been him having fun, but he had to push that car for me to go at a pace that felt pretty fast for me, basically as fast as I could go. But he was doing it in the slower car. You know, if he was driving the same car I was driving, then it would take me tons of training to go as fast as him. And the average driver, you know, really can't come close to what the existing car can do. You know, the car runs a 649 on the Nürburgring. Like, how many drivers are capable of that? Like, not a lot. So it'll be interesting to see what they continue to do with the car, but it will probably be more focused on aerodynamic braking, a new tire compound, and some novel thing that they come up with. And it really depends on what the next generation of car is. You know, like they start with it.
It also depends on what the next generation of race car is. I mean, this car looks like a very clear example of it. It took a lot of things from the racing, you know, the racing series, and it put stuff on a street car that people were like, holy shit, you put this on there? I mean, the stuff they've done with aero, like managing how it folds over the center of the car is wild. And so I don't think we really know what they'll put on the next street car. Like, it's easy to say they can't possibly push it further than this, but I'm sure that we've said that with every generation of sports car, and we just don't know the tech that's being developed. So some of that.
This is the first time I've really thought with an RS that it would be hard to push it further than this. I mean, the other RSs have been great cars, but it's not been like, whoa, you did that? Like, it's just like, oh, it's lightweight and it's a big wing, and you know, and it's raw. But this one is like, oh, you went full, you know, batshit with this thing. The wing is taller than the roof, you know, and it's a big car. It's not a small car. So it's a very extreme example of the car. And all the body panels are different. And, you know, you notice in that photo, it has the old door handles off the 991.2 instead of the ones off the 992, because the doors are carbon. And so they couldn't use the current door handles. So they had to go back to the old door handles on the other one. I mean, it's very, very aggressive. And I'll talk about it more on the next show, but I think it'll be interesting to see them try.
All right. Sean Finney says, what would you rather drive every day? A slightly used C8 Corvette or a slightly more used 991.1 Carrera S with PDK? Both are around 75 grand right now.
That's a very interesting question. And we have a video coming out that will actually approach that tangentially, but not far off, actually. Yeah. We're filming hopefully on Monday, Cayman versus Corvette. What is the best street car for under 100K? That's going to be Cayman GTS 4.0 versus C8 Corvette Z51, which is a video I hope you guys will all watch and hopefully enjoy. C8 Corvette versus the older Carrera. Wow, our 991 Carrera is still $75,000. I'd rather buy a real nice 997 GTS with a stick, you know. Um,
And
that's not a particularly desirable car to me. But they're made well. It's a car that's built well. They don't do much for me though. They just me personally, they don't do much.
I think I would enjoy driving the C8 more because it's such a good overall experience. But I'm not that into how it looks. So that would be the tough thing for me. Like I could walk out of the house every day and look at the 991 and just go, yeah, it looks like a Carrera, which is not exciting, but it looks fine. But the C8, I don't know. Every time I look at it, I just go, yeah. Like, and I know the Z06 looks much, much, much better. But whatever they do with the C9 or maybe a facelift that, tone down some of these edges a little bit, that would be a stronger contender for me.
Yeah. Okay.
Derek Yagan says, a few episodes ago, you talked about your Italian tune-ups in third gear, which got him thinking that third gear is his favorite gear in almost every car he's driven. Do we have a favorite, he says utility gear, but I would say, do we have a favorite gear that we love?
Well, that's interesting. I think the shift into second is probably the most interesting, most satisfying, whether from first or from third, because you're pulling it towards you, pulling the lever towards you. That's very satisfying. But
I like
third. Yeah.
Third's fun because you get good acceleration, but you also get a bit of speed. Second, in almost every car, except like, a new Cayman, second feels like the gearing's too short. You don't really hear the different tones of the engine for very long. The experience tends to be over pretty quickly unless you're in like a Murcielago or something like that. So third, you can spread that out and have that experience, but you're not going 8 million miles per hour like fourth gear. I think I agree with you.
I think third, once you're in the gear, third is a good gear, but I like the act of putting the car into second more.
Gotcha.
And
if you get the heel toe right, it's very, very satisfying.
Very rewarding. Yes. Good question though. It's interesting.
Yeah, it was. I like that. Like which gear is your favorite? And and if you own a Ford GT that competes at half mile, it's probably fourth gear at fifth. Chappie says, medium term, given the lack of EV infrastructure, are Toyota correct? And the answer is still the Prius versus a full EV. So I think he's saying, are hybrids the answer versus full EV right now?
Oh yeah. I mean, in terms of, in a bunch of different ways. I mean, in terms of the average person, I mean, not necessarily Toyota per se, but a plug-in hybrid is a solution for many people because it's the most universally usable, right? You can use a small battery to drive around at lower speeds in the city. You can use a gasoline engine at higher speeds on road trips. You can recharge the battery with the gasoline engine if you need it to, and you can build a lot more plug-in hybrids than you can long-range EVs with the same amount of rare earth metals. So I think Toyota definitely has a point.
Ryan S., I like this question. Through your automotive journalism journey, we've both gained a very specific point of view on what makes a car excellent. Were there specific cars that were critical in informing our perspective, or was it more about the experiences we've had, such as continuously benchmarking on track, off-road, stuff like that?
I mean, I think the more than any one specific experience, it's like the cumulative experience. Like I think we were at it's kind of a good time because we got to start at a time when sports cars sort of transitioned, and so we had a good starting benchmark of middle 2000s, modern enough but still very analog cars, and have been sort of through that process of crappy single clutch automated gearboxes to good dual clutch ones, and from hydraulic steering to bad electric steering to good electric steering. And we were kind of here when cars went from, oh my God, 400 horsepower is a ton, to now stuff is like 1,000 horsepower. And there's been such a, here we were here for the advent of phone integration and stuff like that. So I think we've gotten to sample how a bunch of different cars have approached those challenges, and then gotten to sort of pick and choose what features from each car work the best and don't work. And so tracks are good, and we also we have this resource, this mountain range right here that we get to drive cars on, that is has more variety and bumps and different types of curves than any racetrack in the world. And so by getting to know those roads as well as we have, it's almost like a test track, because when we go on certain places, I go, well, there's a specific bump right here, and I want to see how this car handles this bump compared to another car.
And that's how a lot of manufacturers, large or small, I mean, the large ones can build a test facility, but they build imperfections into the test facility. But in England, you'll hear a lot of the little manufacturers like the McLarens and, Gordon Murray and these other folks talking about specific roads in the Scottish Highlands, or specific sections that they know, or Andrew Frankel, like they all have a specific test road that they go to, just like us, where you go, this road will help me test the damping of the suspension, whether or not the car is too stiff, how it handles weird imperfections, and how it handles different kinds of pavement or like changes in pavement. And that stuff helps us explain to a potential customer or person reading or watching our stuff, like, here's why this car is good or bad, or what it does good or bad. Because if all we did was drive it on a glass smooth track, is you'd learn something about the car. You can learn a lot about it, but you can't learn everything. You have to have, we try to bring, like, or create an environment, or go to an environment where there's all the variables that a potential owner or other person might experience.
Sure. And a track is where you can learn how a car drives at the limit. But even if you're a track junkie, you're below the limit 95% or more of the time. And so, that's a great metric, and I love Chris Harris, and he's not just about videos at the limit, but it's a lot of what he does. And a lot of the information that Chris Harris gives you is very useful if you happen to be Chris Harris. And if you are as good a driver with as much access to racetracks as Chris Harris has. And if you're just a person driving a car below the limit on a back road or every day, that type of information, while certainly entertaining, may or may not be actually very helpful to you. So that may be a longer answer than we needed for that question, but yeah.
Aardvark 88, if you were given the option of receiving a brand new 997 GT3 RS or a 992 GT3 RS for free, which one would you pick? You can never sell either car, and you have to pay for all the expenses, insurance, maintenance, consumables. I mean,
the older car, it's stick, and it's smaller. Yeah.
Done. Yeah, done. William Ray says, Matt, you said that the automatic Supra was disappointing at Pecote. Which cars at Pecote caused the disappointment, and how do you believe the manual will compare to those cars?
By the way, you still live at the beach? Is it blowing like 50 miles an hour at your fucking house right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
It started last night. I walked outside. I went, is it going to rain? And the ocean has been churning like a hot tub with the jets on. I mean,
my pool looks like an ocean right now.
Big Bear, they had
my
warning.
pool has fucking waves in it right now.
They had wind warning, the Big Bear, of like 60 to 100-mile-an-hour gusts coming.
Oh,
This
damn.
is a very
No,
legit
it's
storm.
blowing real hard.
Yeah, it's not a good time to ski up
Okay,
there.
which cars at P. Cody caused the disappointment for the automatic Supra?
Mhm.
Of course, P. Cody is Performance Car of the Year. It's the big road and track group test. And that would have been P. Cody 2019 when that came out, which had the C8 Corvette. That was one. The Porsche 911 Carrera S, the 992 Carrera S, that was one. The Lotus Evora GT, that was one. The Hyundai Veloster N, that was one. The BMW M2, that certainly was one, because that was very similarly priced to the Supra, and it was stick. No, that's the current issue, the 2023 issue, which was great.
Oh yeah.
I'm actually in this photo that you're showing there. In that photo, when that photo was taken, I was napping in the GT4 RS. You don't see me in the photo, but I am there. Yeah, I mean, it felt numb and disconnected and poorly sorted compared to the Carrera, the Evora 400, really the biggest thing that if you want a Supra, that's cool, and by itself it's a nice car, but what you don't want to do is drive it back to back with an M2. That's really the thing you don't want to do, because they're priced close enough to each other and their powertrains are similar enough to each other that you just realize very quickly that the Supra is very much BMW, and you could just buy the BMW and have more room and have better, steering, and have more trunk space and have better materials and stuff like that. Now, I did enjoy the manual Supra. I found that it improved the experience tremendously to get that car in a stick. It made it feel much more like I wanted a Supra to feel. Because the automatic Supra literally uses the same, ZF BMW based gearbox that all the other BMWs use. So it really made it feel very BMW like, whereas the stick did give it some of its own character.
Ivan Capote says, which car have we given a bad review to and later realized we were wrong? Or we were too harsh on it, like first driving impressions compared to a longer stay, or maybe reflection. Oops, I just kicked my dog in the ribs.
Too harsh on it. That's a tough question. I'd have to go. I mean, the one that comes to mind, I'll go way back to what might have been my first ever press car. And it's not that I think I was too harsh on it. It's that the market long term has totally disagreed with me, which was the Toyota FJ Cruiser. And I thought it was stupid, and I thought it drove very clunky and it was hard to see out of, and it was I found it to be pretty unlikable generally, but they are very valuable as collector's items. There is a dedicated FJ Cruiser contingent that collects those things and really likes them, and they have found their niche. I don't know. I mean, I can't think of a lot of other cars that I gave a bad review. I mean, I don't give a lot of bad reviews, and if I do, it's usually pretty justifiable. And I don't give a lot of cars bad reviews and then drive them again at some point later and realize, oh, actually, I shouldn't have said that. That never really happens. Usually if I drive a car and don't like it, that's probably the last time I drive that car. Right?
Usually, I mean, companies aren't incentivized to give you another shot sometimes, but more of the case is
sometimes they insist on it.
Sometimes they're like, please, maybe you got a bad one, but sometimes it just doesn't come up because the press fleet moves along and they cycle the cars out. They're no longer available, and that's what it is. I think I was very harsh to the Fiat 500 when I drove it, the Abarth, and
so
a lot of it was like the infotainment thing just straight up didn't work, which I found frustrating. But I think I had, like, objectively, I still agree with my assessment that the Mini Cooper S is better in pretty much every way. But when I meet people that drive the 500 Abarths, they're just like, I think it's fun. Like, I think it's fun too. It is fun and silly. And I didn't see that at the time. I was just looking at, like, I don't like all of these different things about it. But I think something that's gotten better perspective on in the last 10 years is that a car doesn't have to be perfect to be good. If it makes you happy, flaws, who gives a shit?
I mean, I was also I was pretty harsh on the 500 Abarth because I didn't think it felt like a $29,000 or $30,000 car. I thought it felt like a $22,000 car.
Totally.
And if you pick up a really clean one right now for $13,000, you got a fun little car, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it didn't seem worth the money to me, and I'll stand by that.
All right. Pre-day Sabal, I hope I did the name okay. He's looking at I think IS 500 as a daily commuter. Are there any other vehicles around that price point or up to 10 grand more that we would recommend over it? He's also looking at an M340i, lives in Phoenix, weather's not a problem, roads are fairly smooth. It's only for work. Also, getting a hybrid, but he doesn't pay for his own gas. So I guess gas prices don't matter.
Yeah. IS 500 is a great car for everyday commuting. I mean,
Totally.
it's a nice car. I just saw one on the road recently. It looked great. It's very, very fast. It makes a great sound from that engine. The chassis is very competent, but it does not stand out in any real way. It's very much a sleeper kind of Autobahn burner style car. 340i is definitely a direct competitor. I probably would rather have the Lexus than the BMW. I think the engine is a lot more interesting. The BMW doesn't really do anything for me.
No, the steering on that car is not on the 340 is not great. So you live in Phoenix where there's no twisty roads. So go with the thing that sounds good. And it's a rowdy V8. It's going to be probably like the last one they make. Like, I
mean, a good competitor I think would be a Macan S, with some nice options if you could get one, or an Audi SQ5. Like you said, Phoenix, no corners really. Tarmac in Phoenix is okay. It's not great. It's good. My mom had an SQ5, and I found that to be a very nice place to spend time. It's about the same price as the Lexus. Nothing else really stands out. There's not a lot of sports sedans left. I mean, I assume if this is going to be a company car, since he's not paying for gas, so it probably has to be new. And not something used. But if you're really not paying for gas, I think a Jaguar F-Pace SVR is a rare one, and that might be under 80 grand, maybe 85. I mean, I think the IS 500 is like 65 to 75,000. I think. I haven't looked in a while. F-Pace SVR might be about 10 grand above that, but that's a very cool hot rod, which I'm really into. Or what's the Land Rover Velar SV Autobiography, which is the sleeper version of the SVR. That's pretty cool, actually. I'm into those as well, and I think those are in the 70s, maybe the low 80s. So yeah, start there.
Question means
I love I don't know what that question means. That's my favorite kind of question.
we had one earlier that I just deleted, but I'll say it was like, someone asked, are the new drive selector switches tits or ass? And I said, like, does that mean, now I'm saying it, does that mean like, are they good or bad? But I also don't really mean what selector switches we're talking about. Like, I don't know.
That's a very weird
Switches
question.
on
Yeah.
Porsches instead of an actual shifter. Either way, like
That's very weird.
fine. My wife is looking to replace her Audi Q5 with something similar but more luxurious. She has a Boxster S and a Triumph TR6. Ooh.
Oh, cool wife.
Recommendations for something used under 75 grand that's more luxurious than a Q5.
I mean, I'm thinking Range Rovers, 75 grand should get you a pretty great Range Rover with warranty left and, or extended warranty, right? Definitely more luxurious than a Q5.
Definitely.
It would definitely be a change in driving experience. If you've got a Triumph, you're certainly not afraid of British build quality for sure. I would say, yeah, a very nice last gen Range Rover. Don't get like the SVR. You don't get the big stupid motor. Get the regular, either the V8 or the supercharged 6. Just a regular motor, but nicely appointed.
Or a Velar.
A Velar, yeah.
I like that car. I think
Velars are great. Yeah. Or, I mean, you could get a brand new Defender, which is a nice road car and would be more well luxuriously appointed probably than a Q5 in terms of ride quality and stuff like that. Yeah.
All right, this is a cool question. Travision, whatever. Travis, in his uninformed opinion, the 992 GT3 RS is becoming less of a sports car and more of a supercar. Does that seem accurate in your experience? He doesn't really have a definition for either of the terms, which is fair assessment.
Yeah. I mean, it always kind of was. You start splitting hairs at where you define the difference between sports car and supercar, right? I mean, it depends on where you want to define the difference. To me, it's less sports car and more race car. I mean, almost, because the difference between a regular GT3 and a GT3 RS cannot be exploited on the street, period. I mean, you just can't. You cannot go fast enough on really any public road for there to be a statistical difference between the GT3 and the GT3 RS. What's interesting about the GT3 RS more than anything else, and we'll talk about this in detail on the Pro Driver show, is that you can adjust things in pretty much real time that have never been adjustable before, in the ways that you can adjust them in a real race car. Not to mention, you've got your downforce elements that you only have ever found in race cars. You've got the elimination of the trunk with this pass-through radiator that you only really find in race cars. But then you've got settings that allow you to control how the diff locks and unlocks. You can control compression and rebound separately. You have a DRS function. You have a high downforce function. You have, you have parameters that you as a driver can control that you've never really been able to control before. And there's an optional tire that you can get, a new Cup 2R N spec that is literally a slick with a groove cut in it. I mean, it's a slick. They had one there. Like, it's ridiculous. And they said, I asked Pat Long and Jörg Bergmeister why the cars that we drove on track had the regular Cup 2 and not this Cup 2R. And Jörg said, because we would be changing them every session, because they apparently last 3 laps and then they just are melted and toast. It's literally like the super cheap Nürburgring tire. I think if you ask me, I don't really give a shit where the line is drawn between sports car and supercar and hypercar. I doesn't, and sometimes cars straddle that line. I mean, this car is going out the door for $350,000, $400,000. that's a supercar, if you ask me, at least as much so as a McLaren Artura is at $250,000, So I usually say that my arbitrary definitions are that supercars start at 200 grand and hypercars start at $1 million. It's pretty round, easy round number, if you ask me. But you can draw your own lines wherever you want to, and I'm not going to get into a fight about it.
3 more. Adrian Polito says, we've said that the choices for sports cars in the $25,000 to $60,000 range are dwindling. If we were to create a car for the segment, what would we focus on to make it a commercial success? Ooh, well, that's
to make it a commercial success. Well, that's different.
That's different. I think we should just say, what would we focus on? Because if it was a commercial success, more companies would make them.
Right. Yeah. I would say that the commercial success part is the really hard part. I think if you brought the Alpine A110 over here, that could be reasonably successful without much engineering. I think if Toyota decided to build a $50,000 MR2, I think there's really something there. I think that if there was some,
it'd be cool if Honda made a Honda S3000 or something. And it's because
it had the Civic Type R powertrain in it, but longitudinally mounted.
Maybe that, or like their V6, because one of the BRZ and the FRS are so great. I mean, I can't speak for the new ones really, but I was one of the gentleman that brought the BMW 128i up. His friend came with him, and he runs NASA track events.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about BRZ engine reliability in relation to track work, and apparently it's not very good. Like, he's popped a motor. He knows people that have popped motors. Like, Honda just has the reliability. So I think there's this place in the market for a very reliable, fairly lightweight, simple rear-wheel drive car. Miata owns that.
I'm going to adjust these lights real quick. Hang on.
Right.
I'm listening though.
Miata owns that space. It's just not, that car is fairly impractical for most people. Like, owning a Miata as your only car is a little challenging in terms of space. So and the BRZ is such a great package, but you can't beat the crap out of it constantly for months and months and months and years and years and years. Honda's really good at playing that game. So I'd like to see them step back in the ring.
Needed to get a little balance in my light game here, but I was listening on my AirPods, and you are right.
James Crowley says, with the self-driving Teslas being recalled, do you, Matt, feel safer riding a motorcycle next to Teslas? Could this be the spark that gets us an indicator beacon for cars operating using ADAS?
Well, a couple things out of this question. One, it doesn't say much about our understanding of the term self-driving the way this question is written. Teslas are not self-driving, and odds are no Tesla will ever be self-driving. So let's not, I know what you meant, but let's all make sure that the first thing that we should never do when talking to anybody about cars in any circumstance is refer to a Tesla as being self-driving. It is not. If we're talking about the, quote, full self-driving program, which is not self-driving, it's important to say it, the full length, the full self-driving that is most certainly not self-driving. This recall, the problem with the recall is it wasn't an immediate recall. NHTSA didn't say you must deactivate this feature immediately until this, and this are fixed. Now, it doesn't mean it's not an important first step. It is. There is some level of accountability, but they did not issue an immediate stop sale. They did not issue an immediate deactivate the software. People are still out there using this software right now. And also with an over-the-air update, there's a lot of ways to kind of fiddle with that and say, well, it's been handled, but like, then what? It's like if there's let's just say a car has failing control arms, and all over the country, wheels are falling off cars. Like, oh, I don't know, happened to Teslas. And they issue a recall for the control arms. They have to have a here's the fixed part, and here's our system of accountability, and we're going to inform these owners that they should bring their car in to get the thing fixed, and here's the solution, and we're going to put this better control arm on the car. They don't have a solution to this recall. And so, okay, yeah, they're issuing a recall because the system could get into a crash, but what that doesn't mean is that they will immediately deactivate this system in the cars on which it is installed. That's not what this means at all. And so, does it make me feel better riding my motorcycle? Absolutely not. Not today. May it lead to something eventually that makes me feel better riding my motorcycle? Maybe. If actual action is taken. What they got was a great headline. Some people were informed about this system being dangerous, and possibly some type of fix, but that fix has not yet been established, and it certainly has not resulted in the deactivation of the current system.
And last one. If you could compare watch brands with automotive brands, are there ones that line up well? I.e., is Rolex the Porsche GT cars with getting allocations and values? And then, so what would brand X of car be with brand X of watch that has like high MSRP but tanks in value?
I get asked this one a lot. Usually by watch people, not so much by car people. But yeah, Rolex and Porsche is the very obvious one. Although the way that you buy a Rolex to get a good one is more like how you buy a Ferrari. They make you buy a couple of crappy ones, and then the good one magically appears. Richard Mille is very much like Lamborghini. It's all about materials science. The prices are stratospheric for the products, sometimes a little bit divorced from reality, and yet people buy them. But it's really all about materials science and what they're doing with advanced metallurgies and carbon fibers and fluid dynamics and stuff like that. Lamborghini has an official collaboration with a brand called Roger Dubuis. It's very, very on the nose, and the watches are just as aggressive as the cars, and in many cases just as expensive. There are literally matching ones. As is their relationship between Jacob & Co. and Bugatti. They make a watch that looks like a W16 engine where the crankshaft and pistons move. It's a very impressive piece of engineering, but like most Bugattis, it's very ugly and very gaudy. And then you've got Patek is sort of like the Rolls Royce. It was originally something for very rich old white people, but then became popular with the younger kind of urban crowd, and now there's a lot of collabs with fashion houses and crossovers and stuff like that. Like Patek is doing, really leaning into that Tiffany thing, and you're welcome for that, Patek, because my dad sold Tiffany to LVMH, which is why there's all Tiffany collabs with all the stuff now, because LVMH is cashing in on their brand by painting basketballs and shit Tiffany blue and selling them for $5,000.
What?
Yeah, look at Google the Tiffany blue basketball. It's just a fucking basketball that's blue. I think there's a football too.
Oh, these are from Dope Angels. It's $150 to $250.
Is that that's what it goes for?
Oh wait, yeah, that's what the retail price was. This one.
Oh, what's on the flip?
The flip
what's
on
the flip?
StockX right now,
Yeah.
the last sale was $1,200.
Yeah, for a blue basketball, yo. People are so dumb.
I want a blue basketball, Daddy. I want one.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was off at the $5,000, but yeah, that's, it's ridiculous. So they're cashing on that. And then you've got Bremont, of course, and is like aviation. So I could say that could either be like Spiker, or you could go, it could be British like Morgan, or even possibly like, Bentley and Breitling have a collab. Their watches are no longer cool. The Breitling for Bentley watches, they're not cool anymore. They were very cool in like 2015 when everybody wanted like 50 millimeter, like colossal watches. And then IWC is like Mercedes, both heavily favored by Nazis. It was the Mercedes original 6x6 Mercedes was Hitler's car of choice, and IWC was definitely the Luftwaffe's watch of choice. They make a nice watch though. Yeah, that's about all I've got for the time being.
That's all the questions.
I'll tell you what, for someone that has COVID, my brain made it through almost 2 hours of radio pretty unscathed. Not bad.
You hopefully have a light dose of COVID.
Not bad. It probably is, and it's probably almost over. I mean, honestly, I probably peaked sickness on Saturday. So I probably got it on the trip. And what are you gonna do?
Killed it with red wine.
Yeah, right. I probably did. Okay, so tomorrow, Thursday, for the pro show.
Mm-hmm.
That's all for us today. We will catch up tomorrow. And for those of you wondering what happened to our show with Mr. Ian Tyrrell, we decided to do a current events show. Given the COVID status, it gave me an opportunity to do a from home show, current events, and we will move Mr. Tyrrell to next week. It's like the one crew show, one guest show a week thing. That seems to be working out. And we will leave Zach alone to edit the GT3 RS piece. And we'll see you guys later. I'm sure tomorrow. I hope I'm better, not worse. Thanks, everybody. Bye.